this idea of the ocean is made to function both as a symbol and as an allegory. It has an allegorical function. The meaning that is usually associated with the ocean here seems to also represent something else. And I think my friend Swetha, my colleague Swetha here has picked the right passage when she read from this, but I'll read the last bit again. I think Manjima had read this also for us. Only an ocean could extinguish the biggest fires of the world, and hence the ocean is a title. So basically then the book will be about the fires, isn't it? What are those fires? What are those fires that come or that emerge out of the volcano? And it is, in that sense, a report, a chronicling of the different, let's say, phases of that volcanic fire that the ocean is supposed to extinguish or at least control. So in that sense, it's a very reflective piece of work. I don't think this is a work that you can read after a very hearty, warm meal. It is something you read sitting by the table and also use your, let's say, awareness of literary training. Because the intertextuality, like you were saying, the references to some, let's say, characters and works that she has read all through her life, those references are there. And you need to know, of course, Harry Potter, this, and also from fantasy genre itself, the whole body of fantasy literature, whatever she has read, there is reference to some of those in this work. So it's not something that you read lying on a bed or on a couch after a hearty meal. It's something you sit by the table and try to unpack perhaps for yourself. That's one. The other, of course, is the very conscious adoption of, let's say, post-modernist, let's say, metafictional technique, and the way she has constructed this work. There is that conscious awareness that this is a piece of, let's say, art that she's engaging in. So, for example, that section where she says, to the reader, that's a very self-conscious act. And so these are, in terms of style, in terms of technique, it's a very literary piece of work. It's not your everyday novel that you pick, and read. So don't be deceived by the brevity of the work. This is very reminiscent of even Kafka's The Metamorphosis. That's also a very slim piece of work, isn't it? But then very rich, very dense, both in terms of style and also in terms of content. So I think this is something similar to that in that long tradition, I think. So that would be my, let's say, very general, without going too much into the book and giving it away for free. So I would encourage you to purchase this and support her writing endeavor. I think this is a book that you have to use in the classroom. I'm saying this from the point of view of a teacher.
And that belonging transfers into, or there is a metamorphosis of her into ocean. So as Manjima ma'am said, that she converts into an ocean. She takes the form of the ocean. So I want to ask to you, why that ocean form that you took? Why not any another form?
So oceans seem infinite, but they do have geographical boundaries. When you look at the horizon across an ocean, it seems that the infinite ocean meets the infinite sky, but in reality, we do have geographical limits to oceans. They are not actually infinite if you look at their size. They are large, they are huge, yes. So I kind of feel that every human being, while we do have infinite potential, we say that, we have the infinite capacity to achieve or to accomplish in life, but in reality, we as human beings do have perceptual limitations. We do have boundaries. We do have our own, let's say, circumstantial boundaries or limitations. So I think I wanted to use a metaphor which is vast and expansive, but it is also limited. And I could only, it's the ocean that came to my mind, that ocean seems unlimited, how infinite, how much of an infinite expanse of a water body it is, but that is illusory. Like if you pick up the globe, there are continents kind of marking their boundaries. So oceans are not as unlimited as we would like to believe. So I think I wanted a metaphor for what a human being stands for, unlimited and limited at the same time.
Wow.
Individuals who are neurodivergent as, connecting more to blue. But there is a way in which yellow seems to be the color that, comes to the forefront. Like it's not essentially feeling blue, because you cannot in a way narrow down your experiences of neurodivergence into one color, because there is a spectrum there. So when Manjima was just talking about the depths of the ocean, she was also in a way talking about how it's not the depth in a way also includes a spectrum. So it's not possible for one stage to end and immediately go into another stage. So that evolution is not as seamless as it looks for someone who has not gone through any sort of a mental illness. So that's something that I have to talk about when you ask me about transformation. And also there is an interesting way in which the techniques that you use to write this narrative also implies that you cannot just say that this ends here and I am suddenly a new person the next moment. So that's something that's interesting about a narrative. And also there is a way in which Pauline doesn't look at individuals through all these conventional lens of gender, for instance. So there is an instance in the narrative where she says that I look at everyone as human, and human in with all the vast experiences that every individual is made up of. So there is no right or wrong. She doesn't look at the world through the binary, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why she's able to make that transformation and is able to kind of project Ptolemy as a character who is the need of the hour. Cannot just look at cannot put a microscope into today's world where every individual is going through a lot of challenges, not just health-wise, but there is a prominent way in which she brings in, career, interpersonal relationships, etc. in the narrative. So I believe Ptolemy is a sort of a character that will influence us to look at the world in a different way, through different perspectives.
The earliest example of the epistolary form she earlier mentioned, Lawrence Stern. I mean, you read the Tristan Shandy if you have done your MA in DU, Delhi University Department of English. I think that is compulsory read. I don't know if they have revised the syllabus now, but during our time it was also a compulsory read. So epistolary form, in terms of the choice of the author, the epistolary form is usually, I'm very broadly speaking here, one is, it's part character development. Meaning, it's through the internal monologue, through the let's say the epistolary form, we come to know more about the character who is engaging in that act of writing. And secondly, usually in detective stories, you will also encounter this, a letter or something, as to, let's say, unlock the mystery, or maybe provide a clue, isn't it? So, in that sense, these are very conscious technical devices used by authors in advancing the plot or in building character in a novel. So in this case also, we know quite a lot about the interiority of Ptolemy through her letters. Otherwise, there's very little action. There's very little action in a novel. It's a very reflective kind of... but through her letters, we are able to understand the person she is, more her interiority and her struggles. So in that sense, this is more like a psychological, let's say, novel also, novella also. And because of lack of action, it is through the letter that we are able to, let's say, get into the subconscious or maybe even the subjective experience of the protagonist.
Because I'm talking about this largely from my academic interest in medical humanities, and I've been working on ADHD a bit. So there is often this idea that any narrative written by someone who's going through the any sort of neurodivergent condition is never trusted, because it's considered as a mental illness, so they are not normal, right? So there is this category called neurodivergence and neurotypical. Someone who's a neurotypical would dismiss these experiences, and specifically when you're looking at medical discourse and narrative medicine, they just look at it as a set of symptoms. But for someone who is going through the condition, it's never a set of symptoms, it's their reality. So there is a way in which in one of the sections, one of the later chapters, this sort of a dichotomy is evoked, us versus them. And I'll just read this out. This is part of a conversation between Paulami and her friend Akata, right? Stand up and how, glared Akata. Stand up and how, repeated Akata fiercely. You stand up for yourself even once, and they perceive it as something that is wrong and hateful. How do you stand up when the power of narrative rests with them? So that's a question that is, very, very important today. Where there is a mistrust of narratives of neurodivergent individuals, and more importantly, if you are a woman, there is a way in which it has always been, like when you're looking at the convention of literature, there has always been that sort of prejudice against women writing, also only because you evoke Virginia Woolf and how that tradition still continues. Manjima, would you want to add something to that?
I think I would just say that
because largely they don't look at it as healing, they look at it as a disease.
I think since we are talking about healing, there's a particular portion of the book which is called Healing a Journey. And when you read the book, you kind of find out that Paulami finds outlet in all these pop culture phenomena, like maybe Taylor Swift, who is very popular in today's world, especially amongst young women. And we have films like Karura Ho, Titanic, and we have Wonder Woman, Harry Potter, and all those references. And I feel when we're talking about healing, we kind of narrow it down, but I feel I would like to acknowledge and assert that there is a deliberate intention in which, I have placed these pop culture references. I feel that films, books, music, they play a huge role in healing. In fact, they could play I'm not kind of neglecting or sidelining medical science, but art can be as important for the process of healing as is medical science.
So you also associate yourself with a certain goal. So let's just say Paulami becomes a novel laureate. She ends up winning a novel prize in literature. So when you, let's just say, achieve your goal, that you attach so much value to it, do you believe there is something goes beyond to it, or that your value that you attach to something, it ends there? I want to ask you the professor.
I'm not getting the question.
So the question is like, once you achieve your pinnacle goal, let's say Paulami accomplishes this Nobel Prize in Literature, do you think there is something beyond that, or one is like, you know what, I've achieved everything I wanted to in life? And I think that's a very subjective experience one can have. Like if one has kind of, won the, let's say if one is an actor and has won the Oscar, like what's beyond that? Maybe that's your question.
No, I think I'll give the answer that I gave earlier. I'll expand a bit. I've spoken years back when I was doing my fieldwork research back at home. I spoke to people who were in their 80s, and 2 years after my research, they passed away. They moved on. But even when they were 80s and have children, grandchildren, they have their own struggles. So to exist is to suffer to some degree, and it's about how you find meaning and purpose within that. That's the context in which you live and suffer. I think the problem generally with our culture today is that we think that we can escape suffering. And we sort of get in. No, suffering is part of, I think, our experience, and that keeps us grounded. If we don't know what suffering is, I don't think we'll appreciate what happiness is, as well as we would. So in that sense, they go together. Like they go together. They check each other. They balance each other out, and that makes us appreciate happiness more, I think. So achievement as well is, you have to, I think, conceptualize it as a stage of life, I think. There was one particular anecdote years back I heard somebody shared this. And I think there was a filmmaker, very famous filmmaker. His goal was to win the Oscars, Academy Award. And after he won, I think for Best Director or something, by the sidelines of the event gala, he was asked a question by a journalist. What do you think you wish you had known before you had won this? He said, I wish I had known then that if when you get to the top there is nothing.
I have it on my mind. What was it with the color maroon? Because at a certain point of time everything goes maroon, and I'm really interested as to what all was going on.
Rose is maroon. My favorite flower is my favorite. One of my favorite colors is maroon. Actually, whenever I go for shopping, I pick up something maroon. So, but there's a song by Taylor Swift which is called Maroon, and so a lot of things came together, and my preference for that color, as well as that song which had just come out by Taylor Swift, it's titled Maroon, and somehow the emotion that the color maroon evokes for me, it is beauty but as well as intensity at the same time. Maroon is a dark, intense color. It's not a light, breezy sky blue color. It's maroon, it's deep, and but there's also something subtle about it. It's not as at your face as a red color. It's like, which is why, signboards and street lights, they will use a red light but not exactly a maroon light, right? So there's something subtle about maroon. It's not exactly, kind of flashing at your face, and it's deep and intense, and there's also something beautiful about it. And Rose is in Titanic, the name of the protagonist is Rose. The flower rose is also one of my favorites, so that's how maroon came up. And I was imagining, there's this chapter called Maroon High School, and that there's a chapter called Maroon Ball Dance. So everything is like maroon aesthetics in that, in those chapters. And sometimes what I do is, this is a little secret of mine while I try to write. I have it out, and perhaps Manjima can talk a bit about it, because I was fascinated by the way she uses colors in the narrative. So I would like to know a bit about that. So I'll just read this out. Dear reader, there will be those blue stones and silver linings. However, that's all there is. Blue stones and silver linings. Something about studded gemstones always appealed to me. The royalty perhaps, yet apart from the elegance, it is the substance I am searching for. For this ocean is made up of water, not only to some extent. What about the rest? If I dive into this ocean, what do I see? I see an aquarium with sandstones on the lining. The earth bed is made up of a few faded golden and white ones, greenish blue and maroon, a multicolored palimpsest. I love this expression. I continue. What lay beneath that earth bed? The answer was obvious. Ruins, devastation, smoke, fire. So by now, the ocean has endured a volcano. Only an immense ocean can drown the volcano of eruptions. Only an ocean could extinguish the biggest fires of the world.
and hence the ocean is her title. Would you like to talk a bit about the palimpsest?
Yes. So in the initial part of the book, Pauline is writing a lot of letters to this imagined person named Jay. And more than a letter, it's kind of a musing directly to the reader. It's more like Dear Reader instead of Dear Jay. And she says that maybe oceans are water reservoirs, but are they habitable? And she continues to say that is when, this is a reference to Titanic movie if you have watched it, that is when I was reminded of Jack who flows to death for Rose. That is when I was reminded of sharks. Now the reference to ocean and why I use the ocean metaphor a lot is the volcano eruptions are synonymous to Pauline's inner emotional and psychological turmoil. It takes a vast, the soul, the expansiveness of the soul is compared to the vast infinite ocean. It's only an infinite expanse of soul that can conquer all psychological and emotional turbulence. So the volcano is kind of an analogy for internal turbulence. The ocean is for the soul. And silver linings and blue stones and royalty, that's because Pauline was someone who was not willing to be taken away by external elegance or superficial matters. She was always interested, she was always looking for the substance inside. And she says initially in the letter to Jay that, I'm not interested in she kind of uses all these colors, greenish blue shades, deep blue shades. She uses a lot of colors and she says that, you know what, I see a greenish blue car standing there, but it doesn't remind me of the greenish blue ocean that I am inside. So for reference to those of you who haven't read the book, Pauline is abducted to the underwater sea. She is inside the ocean in a hospital. And she is writing letters to some person called Jay. And throughout the novella, we are wondering about who is this Jay, what is his identity. And I think I will avoid talking about that portion because that is the mystery and intrigue that keeps the reader interested in the novella. So I won't be giving any spoilers, but the multicolored palimpsest is basically the infinite dimensions and colors of our soul. That is what I referred to when I said multicolored palimpsest. On the soul, a lot of experiences get inscribed. So palimpsest is something on which everything else gets inscribed. So that is what I meant by multicolored palimpsest, and that there is no one color to the soul. There are multiple colors. There are multiple colors of oceans. It's not just blue, it's just different shades. And by referring to silver lining and studded stones, silver linings refers to every cloud has a silver lining, and studded stones is basically referring to royalty. A lot of royalty wear jewelries with studded stones. So, and that is how she refers to, maybe those studded stones are great, but I'm not interested in those. So that's also a reference to Titanic because Rose was gifted this studded stone by her fiancé, but she was interested in the love that Jack had to provide her instead of that precious jewel. So yeah, all those metaphors are kind of coming in it. Hugh? I would now want to ask Professor Shelmi that what were your initial thoughts after reading the novella? What was your first impression?
Thank you.
Professors, so what kind of other manifestations do you think that whether self-love is restricted to caring for oneself, health primarily, or there are other manifestations of self-love?
Well, I think as I grow older, I've grown to also realize that we're all in search of some form of meaning. like to exist is to suffer, and you have to choose which kind of suffering you will live through. But as I become older and reflect more on my experiences and also the experiences of my loved ones and family members and those who are close to me, I realize, I don't know how far this is true for you, but for me, love is a verb. It's not about loving ourselves, but it's about loving others, maybe someone or some people. And in loving them, we find, meaning for ourselves, our existence, our purpose. It can sound a bit paradoxical, but it's like to love yourself is to love others. And that gives you a sort of rooting and grounding in reality that makes this suffering or this existence worthwhile. Because if it is only about, for me, I'm not very sure with how the modern pop culture have used the word self-love. I'm not very sure the distinction between this expression and narcissism. I'm not sure where the line is. But I think love is giving. Love is to give. Love is not something you keep with yourself. You have to give it. You have to act it. And in acting, you receive also. In acting out that love, you receive. So that is one. And when it comes to love, there was also a mention. Fictional love is one of the themes in this novel. I will not go too much into that. I won't spoil it for you. But there's also about love, there's one portion where there's a description of types of love, or where you can find love. I think I would like to draw your attention to, if you're interested in this particular, the English language love is very limited. The word love is very limited. The Greeks had 4 types of love. C.S. Lewis has written an entire book on this called The 4 Loves. And he calls it, there is the erotic love, there is the storge love, there is the filial love, and there is the agape love. Agape love is usually considered the highest form of love, which is sacrificial love. So of course, in each of these types of love, the element of sacrifice is present, and that gives it worthwhile. It's worthwhile, let's say. That makes it worthwhile, that gives it value, more value. So the element of sacrifice is always involved in love. I have not come across any exemplary love that I've seen in my life where there is no element of sacrifice. So self-love appears to be very contradictory when you're operating from that point of view. You love somebody or you love some people, and you get back love in return, I think. It's in that sense transactional. So it mirrors back. I think that also makes your life worthwhile. Your suffering, you feel validated to some degree, and not in a very narcissistic sense, but in terms of okay, I have somebody who will be there for me or with me. That kind of so the subconscious picks on this, I think, and makes our existence bearable. So for me, self-love, that expression, I don't quite know. Maybe there is a nuanced way in which it's used today. For me, my understanding, maybe because I'm a Christian also, I was brought up in a Christian home, and the way love has been taught is love is a verb. You have to act out. You may not like somebody, but you can still love them, show love to them. So liking is natural. You meet somebody, you either like them or don't like them. That's different. But love is a choice in the sense that even you may not like somebody, but you can still show them love, some love. But like, though, you can't control. You either like them or you don't like them. That's there. But that doesn't mean that you cannot show love, some degree of love to them.
Right. Good point.
So